Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss and Kristen West, only on LA Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to What Women Want Talk Radio. And thank you for joining us for our show tonight, Psyching Yourself into Happiness. I'm broadcasting from New York, and my co-host, Kristen West, is in our gorgeous studio at LA Talk Radio. I can't see her, but I must say that the partnership works. Hi, Kristen.
I'm invisible. No, actually. Hi, Judy. No, I'm not invisible, but yeah, we're a fully bi-coastal show, New York and LA. It's exciting.
It is exciting. And What Women Want Talk Radio has actually reached the 1,200,000 download mark since we first did the airwaves, celebrating that. And between LATalkRadio.com's archives, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, and all over social media, you can find us everywhere. So listen to those replays, and we're taking sponsors for our show for the next few months. Email us a complete deck if you're interested in sponsorship at whatwomenwantradio.com. Now, I'm really honored to have two very special guests on this evening. They wrote a book together called Think, Act, and Be Happy. New York Times bestselling author and therapist Dr. Mike Dow, and Amy Newmark is back, publisher, and also co-author with Dr. Dow with an unusual chicken soup for the soul book. And we're going to talk about why this one is so unique in just a few minutes. Kristen, do you think anyone can think themselves into being happy?
Yes, I do it every day.
But that's you. You seem like basically a happy person.
Well, I mean, like I was saying before, you really have to choose to put the up in upheaval. When stuff in life is happening to you, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you, or you're moving with it instead of against it. So it is sort of a mindset when things are going wrong to find the gift and all of the challenges that people have and that you have personally.
I think it takes a lot of work, right? I mean, some people have to work harder at it than others.
No, it's true. And sometimes we have devastating circumstances in our life where, someone dies or there's some great financial hardship or something happens. And that's when you really have to use certain thinking skills to get yourself in a state of happiness no matter what's happening. But I think sometimes also, and I'd love to explore this with Amy and Dr. Dow more, is that happy means different things to different people at different times.
Yeah, and where to start, too, because I feel like, they're saying that you can always find your way around whatever situation you're in, eventually, at least, with taking that first step forward. That's what I say. Always just take the first step, no matter what it is. And, it does take work. It takes time. It's a process. And Dr. Mike Dow is going to fill us in on that process. I'm excited because he has some really basic tips that we can apply to our lives that can really change us. I have actually changed Amy Newmark, as she was saying in a couple of her videos. So I'm excited to hear what they have to say. My background originally comes from high fashion modeling with Ford New York. And after that, I experienced the other side of the camera and became a magazine editor and then author with St. Martin's Press, which eventually led me back around to the front of the camera, hosting and reporting regularly for Better TV, City Buzz, and all the TV networks around the country, both regional and national. I'm currently the host of AWE's Behind the Gates, as well as a regular contributor on NBC and Fox. I'm also the mom of twin teenage girls and an entrepreneur. I don't have enough to do. I founded the company What Women Want Networking almost 8 years ago, and I've created the What Women Want National Conference. And I'm excited to say we're about to kick off our second year in 16 days at the Hyatt Regency in Atlanta, Georgia. And the theme is Go Big, because we're not going home. That's right. As a matter of fact, one of our guests this evening, Amy Newmark, is our opening keynote for this 3-day spectacular. I am so excited to hear her speak in person, not just on the show now. She's coming to you live. And if you want to join us in Atlanta, it's not too late. We're filling the room very quickly, though, with incredible women from all around the country. Speakers, VIPs. It's where personal meets professional development. I say where mindset meets business. So go to whatwomenwantconf, psychingyourself.com to get your pass. It's less than $300 for 3 days of truly transformational, life-changing experience, let alone all the networking and the quality of women that are attending. Okay, I've talked enough about me and my ventures. Kristen, besides co-hosting this show with me, and also, this is another exciting thing that's going to happen. You're co-hosting with me at the conference in Atlanta for a live and in-person What Women Want TV show preview. Doing a little foreshadowing there, if you will. If anyone's caught on to that. Yes, we're becoming a TV show. We're in the midst of that creation. Let everyone know what's going on with you, Kristen.
Well, besides planning this with you, and I'm like just bursting with excitement talking about talking as little as we can about this and being in the room with you.
I'm feeling so esoteric right now.
I know. It's amazing. First of all, I want to thank all of our listeners for voting in the fantastic awards, the Fantastic Film Festival Awards. We're still awaiting the results, but I want to thank everybody from our What Women Want audience that voted for the Fantastic Film Festival Awards and your support for the Spirit Room. I really greatly appreciate that. I am going to be taping a live horror talk with Kristen West at Fantastic. Right after the conference. I'm going to the conference, seeing Judy, and then I'm at Fantastic the very next week shooting a live audience version of Horror Talk with Kristen West, our second season there, part of it. And it's really exciting because Horror Talk with Kristen West just was officially selected to the Baltimore Next Media Web Fest. So I will actually probably be in Baltimore the first week of November. So it's,
oh my gosh.
So it's Kristen's Bi-Coastal National Tour coming to you this Halloween season.
And then when you're done with that, What Women Want is kicking off next year. So it's so exciting. And Kristen, I can't wait to see you also. So let's bring on Dr. Mike Dow first, because I am also excited to hear about this new book that him and Amy wrote. He's a New York Times best-selling author and America's go-to therapist. He's a regular on Dr. Oz, The Doctors, and Rachel Ray. And he's hosted shows on TLC, VH1, and E! Think and Be Happy. Congratulations, Dr. Mike.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having us. I think this is a really important topic, and I think we could all use a little bit more happiness. As you said, it means different things to different people, and I think we have a lot to offer everyone in the country to be just a little bit happier or peaceful or calm or whatever you're seeking.
That's right. Everyone's trying to get some of that. So this book basically is, you say, solving your problems without going to a therapist. Isn't this book going to put you out of business?
Well, I don't think so. And in fact, it's interesting that when Amy and I really were talking about this book, it really is all about training your brain. And Amy was talking about all of the hundreds of Chicken Soup for the Soul books. And she's, when I was sort of telling her, my take on cognitive behavioral therapy and CBT 101, Amy was saying, oh my gosh, the people in our stories, they're using CBT all the time. So I think what I want people to realize is that we are training our brains each and every day, every choice we make, every thought that we have. So, I think it's wonderful if people are coming to see somebody like me on a weekly basis, or if you use this book as a companion. But I think the takeaway is that you actually have the power to train your brain to be your own therapist each and every day. You can have the mindset shifts, the reframes, and it really can change your life in profound ways.
Well, it sounds like it. And I would love to hear I know you're applying the CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy, which I want you to explain in just a bit, to the combination of the storytelling and Chicken Soup for the Soul. Tell us how this book is laid out, how it rolled out, and what's so different about the traditional Chicken Soup for the Soul books.
Well, what makes this book really different is it starts with a story, as you've probably encountered in countless other Chicken Soup for the Soul books. But then we wanted to take a deeper dive, and we really wanted to help people understand how they could take the aha moment, or what I call the Me Too moment, that people have when they read a story, right? There's always that inspiration, or you think to yourself, wow, I feel that way too, as I'm going through my XYZ, whether it's divorce or struggle at work. And, it's just like, it's sort of actually like being in group therapy when somebody else has the same experience. So you have that Me Too moment, but then we're really, with some of the CBT principles, I'm helping you to take that aha moment or that Me Too moment and really directly apply it to your life. So, this book has 24 of the most common problems that I see in my own private practice. So I guarantee you we're going to cover the issue that's near and dear to your heart or is something that you want to work on. And then we take a deep dive, and I tell you how to apply CBT to your thoughts, to your everyday actions. And then there's a lot of really fantastic journal entry parts so that you can actually have a moment of reflection to say, yeah, this is what I can do. This is how I can think differently or act differently to be a little happier.
Well, you can't get better than that. And I think the stories from real people really resonates with the combination of your therapy. So it's the perfect mix. Kristen, why don't you bring on Amy?
Yes, Amy Newmark, publisher and editor-in-chief of the Chicken Soup for the Soul best-selling book series, is here tonight with their newest book, Chicken Soup for the Soul, The Power of Yes. Though that was one of the books, but actually it is Think, Act, and Be Happy, but you should buy The Power of Yes. Amy spent years on Wall Street before finding her way to a company that promotes and shares inspiring stories of kindness, compassion, and paying it forward. Welcome to the show, Amy. Welcome back. Yes, you're here.
I am here. I feel very powerful. I'm saying yes to coming back, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Atlanta in a couple of weeks.
I am so excited. And it's interesting. When I learned about this new book, I had all of these questions, and I wanted to ask you, because you steer the creative direction of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. The title of your new book is Think, Act, and Be Happy. Why is it be happy instead of feeling happy?
Being happy means you're truly happy. And we really took this out of the principles of cognitive behavioral therapy, which is that you think a certain way, you act a certain way, and then you are a certain way. So that's why it's think, because we're helping you change your thoughts, act, because we're helping you change your actions. Because sometimes if you act as if you feel a certain way, then you actually will feel that way, and that's why we then say, and then you will be happy. You will truly be happy.
I love that. Now, obviously, you get so many submissions for your books. I mean, it's probably thousands, and you had to pick the best stories for this particular book. Were there any tips or themes that recurred about happiness and the pursuit of happiness that you got from the people that submitted the stories? Were there anything patterns that you noticed that stood out?
So what we did in this book was we went and we found the best stories on these most common issues that we had already published in other books. So this is really the cream of the crop, because our regular books will get 5,000 or 6,000 submissions and we'll publish 101 stories. So then imagine us going through the past 150 or so books and then taking 40 stories from those books and selecting those stories to use in this new book, Think, Act, and Be Happy. So what we looked for was stories that would really illustrate how a regular person just intuitively and organically used cognitive behavioral therapy to solve his or her own problem in a certain area. And then we have these 24 common problems that we deal with. And in each case, we give you one or two Chicken Soup for the Soul stories where somebody just naturally practiced cognitive behavioral therapy on themselves. So that's how we arrived at the stories that we used. Mike and I and our associate publisher spent months going through hundreds, maybe thousands of candidates to pick the stories that we used in this book. So it's particularly powerful.
Well, I love that, and I'm sure you had to go through it with a lot of care. Now, you have a very successful format. You have a readership that knows the formats of your books from buying hundreds of books. Did you have did it take a leap of faith to kind of depart from your usual format of the books and do it this way with the writing prompts and the reflections?
It did not take a leap of faith because I was so struck by the fact that our writers are really using tools they have within themselves, and that's a theme that we have talked about more and more in our books. I'm going to be talking about that at the What Women Want conference in Atlanta, actually, because I had talked about this 2 years ago in my book called Simply Happy. I really believe that our stories show that we all have the strength, the abilities, the creativity, the imagination, the faith. We have all those tools inside ourselves to really become the mechanics for our own lives. And so it was really just one step further to move from a normal Chicken Soup for the Soul book to this book, which is a fabulous combination of those great, inspiring stories that are so relatable, combined with Mike's amazingly easy to understand, simple and easy to implement practices where he just takes you by the hand and says, okay, you see how that person solved her problem in that area? All right, that's why that worked, and here's why that's going to work for you, and now fill out this little worksheet here, and I'm going to show you how you can apply that same thing to your own life and solve your problem, whether it's that you're, too negative all the time, or whether you get stressed all the time, or whether you want to lose some weight, or whether you have insomnia, whatever the problem is. So it seemed like a very natural progression to me to make this book with Dr. Mike Dow.
It certainly is. And Dr. Mike, I'm curious to know, in going through all these stories and coming up with all of the solutions on how to really take it a step further in your life and apply the cognitive behavioral therapy, what's one of the most surprising yet simplest things that people can do to make themselves happy, but they just don't? And it seems to be maybe one of the things that you're saying over and over again to people. Well, if you just do ABC and you just, what's something that you just think to yourself, my gosh, I can't believe people aren't doing this all over the place every minute?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's really reframing how you think, and it's not as much about changing your circumstances. And what I mean by that is we really know that it's not so much about needing $1 million or that job. There was this really beautiful story in the book, a couple who was down on their luck, and all it took was one comment from their daughter appreciating the flowers to sort of reframe and change the mindset of that mom. And I think that's one of the beautiful takeaways of this book, that, it's being happy, because, just sort of to echo what Amy was saying, to me, feeling happy feels fleeting, and being happy means that no matter what you are going through or who you are, what your life looks like right now, you actually have the power to change the way you think, and that makes you happier. And then if you want to be a little happier, that's where the action comes in, right? So baby step by baby step at a time, you can start to make changes in your life. But, I think it all starts with the way you think, which is why there was actually one chapter that we started with the act and then went to the think, but usually we started with the think and then changed the act, because I think you have to be grateful. I think you have to look on the bright side. I think you have to see the glass is half full, and we'll teach you how in this book. And then if you want even more abundance in your life, then it's using the baby steps and the behaviors to create more of that.
So
I agree with Mike, and I think that being happy is actually something you have to choose, because don't we all know people who are just always negative about everything, and they drive us crazy because they just have chosen, they've made a choice to be negative, whereas I always choose to be happy. And I guess for some of us that just comes naturally, and some of us have to learn how to always reframe everything in a more positive manner.
It's interesting because we're talking about mindset and the mindsets that we're kind of accustomed to having. And it's interesting to me in America in particular, in the Declaration of Independence, it says you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, it doesn't say that you have the right to be happy, but you have the right to pursue it, which is very deeply embedded into like our national consciousness and how we think about ourselves as Americans. And yet so many people in America are unhappy and have that mindset issue, and they're depressed or they're dissatisfied. So is happiness something we have to pursue, or is it something we have to allow, Amy and Dr. Dow?
I'm going to go with the non-scientific approach, which is that a lot of people just refuse to allow it. But now I'm going to let the expert tell you what he sees, because he's actually the one who's practicing psychology and therapy on his patients.
I'm going to say pursue and then allow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it is a little bit of both. I think the thoughts are more about the C in CBT, the cognitive. I think that is more about the allowing. And we have some really great mindfulness meditations in the book as well that help you to allow. And then the behavior is a little bit more about the pursuing. But I would say that in this country, most people get a little too obsessed with the pursuing and struggle more with the allowing. So I would say that 80% or 90% of people, because of everything we see on TV, we think that the 80-inch TV is going to make us happier, or that car, or that job, or that significant other, because, people are now shopping for spouses on an app where you're just scrolling rapid fire. And really, so I think in 2018, I think the allowing is probably more important. And then if you want to make some tweaks to your life, as Amy said, I think there are some people who just get stuck. And if you're a miserable person with $50,000 in a bank account and you win the lottery, well, you're probably just going to be a miserable person with $1 million. and the research, and that's what the research shows. So I think we have to pivot a little bit towards the allowing, because I think that will help most people to become happier.
Mike, tell us what exactly cognitive behavioral therapy is.
So CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, is actually quite simple. And what I love about this is Amy and I made it really simple for people, because when you hear cognitive behavioral therapy, it sounds really jargony. So really, this is what CBT does. It studies how people think, and there are what we call the 7 pitfall thought patterns. So research shows that people who aren't as happy, so if you're a little depressed, a little anxious, a little pessimistic, these are the kinds of thoughts that people think in. They think in polarized black or white sort of views. They, sort of thoughts like, if I'm not a complete success, I'm a complete failure, or they're always pessimistic. So the cognitive piece helps you to identify when thoughts like that come up, so that you can actually talk back to them. There's a really great exercise in the book where we have those little cartoon thought bubbles, and we make people, we ask people, we invite them, because, this is actually something really fantastic for them, to write what their thoughts are, like you're in a cartoon with those little thought bubbles, right? So CBT actually scientifically studies these thought patterns of happy people. And if you notice that you have 1 or 2 or even 5 of these negative pitfall thought patterns popping up, the first step is awareness, and then the second step is changing the thought. So, for example, if you're somebody who, is a perfectionist and you think in polarized thought patterns, there are lots of ways where you can say, well, you know what, even though I had a half cookie today, my breakfast and lunch were super healthy. So maybe I can actually start to pay attention to what I did right versus what I did wrong. And then the behavioral piece of cognitive behavioral therapy, I always go back to that example of treating a phobia, where baby step at a time, you teach your brain that, yes, you can get on that airplane. Yes, you can hold a cat in your lap. And, I think that's the most obvious example, but I think we have to realize that even if you're not treating a phobia, we are all training and changing our brains with everything, with every choice that we make each and every day. So
that's kind of scary if you think about it.
Scary or empowering, and I think when you're going down a downward spiral, it's scary. So we're going to help people to shift that to a positive place. And then it actually becomes empowering that you can do that, and you have so much control, more control than you think, over your life and your state of mind.
It sounds like the shifting starts with being more aware.
It really does. That's exactly right. Yeah. And we hope that the stories help people to, helps to raise that awareness, because if you hear somebody else thinking it, it's always easier to identify things in other people, isn't it? Don't you have that experience where if somebody's being judgy or materialistic, you can spot it from a mile away, but it's a little bit harder to admit those things about ourselves. So when you hear it in other people, I think the awareness, you're absolutely right, it is the first step.
So how hard do we have to work on training our brain?
Depends how unhappy you are.
Right. Well, I guess what I'm asking is, should we spend 30 days a chapter? Is this something that we spend a week on each chapter? You know, obviously not 5 minutes unless you're really good. But how much time investment should people put, especially if there's a chapter in the book that they might have a challenge with? How about that?
Yeah, and it's journaling. I have to tell everyone listening, because they can't see the book like I can, but you know, it's actually not just changing the way you think, but it's a combination of writing it down and working through it.
Yeah, and I think people will find it's easier and than you think. And you know, when Amy and I were talking about this book, we think most people are going to go to the table of contents, you know, pick out that one chapter. You know, maybe you want to be an optimist, or maybe you're dealing with divorce or a health problem or insomnia, and you're probably going to go right to that chapter, and you're going to work through that chapter really quickly over the course of like a couple days. But then you're going to realize that even the stories that maybe you thought had nothing to do with you, or maybe it wasn't an issue for you, you're absolutely going to learn something from every chapter. So I guess the short answer is it's not that hard. And that's what we want people to realize. It's not that hard, because we break it down in such an easy way, baby step by baby step at a time.
Amy, you said
I totally agree, because even though I helped make the book, I felt a little bit like I was one of Mike's patients, and I found
tell us about the insomnia. That was amazing.
That chapter worked on me so incredibly quickly. I mean, that was basically like a one-day thing. It was an instant awareness. So, I coupled that with the chapter we have about stressing less. But even if you go just to the insomnia chapter, here's what I learned from that chapter. I mean, there were a lot of good things in that chapter to help you overcome insomnia, but here's one really simple thing that changed everything for me. What Mike said was, you know, we all need between 7 and 8 hours a night, so you know whatever is good for you. So let's say you know you need 7.5 hours a night, and you usually like to go to bed at midnight, and you want to get up at 7:30, and that way you get your 7.5 hours. But if you put your head down on your pillow at midnight and you don't go to sleep right away, you start worrying about it. And then you start thinking, oh, now I'm not going to get enough sleep. And you start obsessing about it. And then you start doing that thing that we've all done where you look at the clock. Well, it's 12:30, so if I go to sleep now, I'll still get 7 hours. And you start negotiating with yourself, you know, and you're up half the night. So what Mike said is, give yourself a half hour of buffer zone. So if you want to be asleep by 12, turn off the lights and put your head on your pillow at 11:30. If you're lucky enough to go to sleep right away, then you might just wake up at 7 instead of 7:30. You know, I mean, you'll get the time back in the morning. But just knowing that you've built in a 30-minute buffer zone and you don't have to fall asleep immediately makes you so much calmer about going to sleep that you'll probably go to sleep a lot faster than you used to. And so that's what I've been doing, and it changed everything for me. I put my head down, whether I'm at home, whether I'm on a business trip, and I say, oh, yeah, I'm in my 30-minute buffer zone. I don't have to worry about the fact that I'm not asleep yet. And then I go to sleep because I took that stress away.
I'm so glad you're using that example, Amy, because that's one of the, the hundreds of tips. And a lot of them, CBT is actually pretty common sense, which I really like. It's a really action-oriented type of therapy, and it's a lot of the tips like that one, Amy, I think they're so common sense, aren't they? But yet when you hear them out loud or you apply them to your life, I think people find, like Amy did, that they have a profound impact on all sorts of problems or issues people have in their lives.
Yeah, now another one I've been using a lot, and I think that Judy and Kristen will definitely get this because we're all so incredibly busy and probably get a little stressed at times. But in chapter 3, Mike points out, well, we have this story from this woman, April Knight, who she has real anxiety problems, and she finally decided that she needed to deal with her anxiety, and she started writing down on a piece of paper everything she was worried about. And she would write down a worry and throw it in a box, write down another worry, throw another piece of paper in the box. And after a month, she opened up the box and she took out all of the worries, and they were big things like money or family issues or smaller things like, I think my car made a funny noise. But whatever it was, she threw it in the box. She pulled it out at the end of the month, and she realized that there were 3 things that had happened to those worries. 1, they had never come true. 2, they had come true, but they weren't nearly as bad as she had thought they were going to be. Or 3, they were handled in some other way. She didn't have to do anything. Somebody else came along and resolved the situation. So then Mike took that story and made a whole fabulous CBT exercise from it, where he has us write down 5 things you worried about recently, and then write down what actually happened. Well, now I'm practicing that on myself. I was out on a walk the other day. I was worried about something, and then I said, no, I have to remember this is the exact same kind of thing that I usually worry about. And then, of course, it either resolves itself or it doesn't happen at all, or it wasn't as bad as I thought. So now I'm starting to just like put an X through those things I'm worried about right away. Like I'm just saying up front, oh yeah, that's the kind of thing that always goes away. So just don't even go there. So that was another one. That's another chapter in our book that I felt had instant results.
And, that's really a cornerstone sort of tool of CBT. It's sort of looking at the contrary evidence. So when you are worried about something and you identify that pitfall thought pattern, you find in your own life the evidence that is probably not going to be nearly as bad as you think. So, I love that example also. And, we teach people how to really apply that to their lives.
So I know one thing that everybody worries about, everybody thinks about, everyone has.
Kristen, you don't worry, do you?
Oh, I worry. Of course I worry. Of course I worry, but then I have to control it. People worry about money. And, America is the richest country in the world, but only about 1/3 of us are very happy according to the statistics that are available. But there are certain problems out there that we worry about that we think money will solve, but money can't solve all our problems either. So, some people get in that trap of worrying about money. How do they break themselves of that? Or making money, their happiness contingent upon having a certain amount of money. How do we break ourselves of that challenge?
I think that's all about gratitude. And I think that's really all about training your brain to look at the glass as half full. First of all, I have to tell you, when Amy and I were going through the stories, I can't tell you how many times I was brought to tears. And, it really is all about that reframe and changing the way that you think. And, there was this incredible story about these 2 people who were both dealing with paralysis, living their lives in wheelchairs, and they met at a wheelchair race, and they fell in love, and they had a family, right? So it really is about that reframe. And if you have that reframe and it's potent, then you realize you don't have to have a lot more money. We can always strive to make a little more money, but really true happiness and being happy is much more about changing your mindset and your point of view than it is about changing your external circumstances, like your finances.
So there, I think one of the things that people are challenged by and don't necessarily latch onto easily is that there are different flavors of happy. There's joy, there's being content, there's satisfaction, there's happy, like you find $100 on the street unexpectedly. So how do you both, Amy and Dr. Mike, how do you define happiness for yourselves, and how should people go about defining happiness for themselves?
I think I have an answer that I've developed from reading tens of thousands of Chicken Soup for the Soul stories, and I think that I would say the definition of happiness is being able to count your blessings. being able to see them. And one of the things that I've learned is that half of us are naturally grateful, and we naturally are able to count the blessings in our lives. And, it starts raining, and we're like, oh, well, that's good because we've been having a drought and we need the rain. Whatever it is, we can see the good in it, and we can see the good in our own lives. And I think half of us are not born with that natural ability. So one of the things that we did in the book, and we actually did it right up front, it's in chapter 2, was we taught you how to use gratitude because it is so important. And I actually worked in the past with Deborah Norville on a book about learning to use the power of gratitude. And one of the things that we talked about in that book was how this is one character trait that you can actually change in you. Some people are born a certain way. They're always going to be that way. But the cool thing about gratitude is it's a character trait that you can actually add on later. And it's really easy to add it on. I mean, you can be the most negative person in the world, and if you start keeping a gratitude journal in a month, you can be completely transformed. And so we talk about that in chapter 2 of our book.
I love that you brought that up. Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Mike.
And I think for me, well, first I have to say that I love that we use science and we tell you scientifically what helps people to be more grateful. So, there's a lot of science throughout the book, which I think people will really enjoy. And, I think for me, happiness is, I would say that contentment is for me, and Amy was talking about, well, half people are born that way. Well, that's true. I've looked at my own genetics and I've seen how my genes affect my happiness levels. And, so one of the many genes is how you process dopamine. And it's no surprise that I score high on personality traits like openness to new experience because of the way genetically I am wired to process dopamine. So my brain really likes sensation, and it really likes that upper dopamine. And that's what my genetic testing has revealed, which I always had a feeling because I saw all the personality traits. And, so for me personally, my brain, my genetics, who I am, I have had to train my own brain to be more content. So, when I was younger, happiness was something that I chased. And for me personally, now happiness is more about contentment. So isn't it interesting that, I've used CBT on myself to train myself in the way that I needed to. And, you're going to find, people will find in this book that there will be exercises that really speak to you and train your brain in the way that you need it. So if you're sort of somebody who is too content and you're afraid to take risks, well, maybe you need more dopamine, and you need to read the chapter about this woman who became Celine Dion's co-writer after she trained her brain to not be afraid of airplanes anymore. But if you're somebody like me and, getting on airplanes has never been a problem, maybe it's about finding the contentment. And so the meditations in the book will help you. So, I think it's just interesting, this intersection between genes, personality traits, and happiness. And you'll find something that helps you to change your own brain.
And I'm wondering also, the difference between when you roll over from acting happy to actually being happy. What are some of the traits you can, I guess, detect when you do reach that true happiness?
Well, I can tell you something that I find really interesting in the people that I treat and people who are going to read this book is that when you are happy, it becomes a feedback loop, right? So happiness is less about a linear cause and effect. I do this and I become happy. Happiness is a feedback loop, just like depression is a feedback loop. So once you are in it, you will find that it becomes easier to stay in it because you will naturally be smiling more. And, there's this one really interesting study that made subjects hold a chopstick in their mouth in a way that just forced their face into a smile. And then the subjects had no idea what they were doing. They thought they were doing some, weird, maybe thought they were going to eat some really good orange chicken or something. But their happiness scores went up.
You could tell what makes him happy.
I know. I do love Chinese food. But it really is, even smiling is part of that feedback loop. So I think when people find that they're happy, they'll find that they're in this feedback loop of thoughts, of behaviors, of feelings that
it
feels
becomes
almost
more
effortless.
natural.
It's natural and effortless. That's right. And if there's one part that you're missing, well, I know that you're going to find it in one of the chapters, and it's just going to sort of push you back into the feedback loop in that way, and then it's a lot easier to stay there.
Judy, what makes you happy?
Life, baby.
Life.
Waking up in the morning and just knowing that I'm alive. But I didn't consciously get that way. So some people, I think when they hear me say, I wake up every morning and the first thing I do is say thank you. And actually one of the catalysts for that was you, Amy, when you came on to talk about the book Simply Happy. The way you talked about the gratitude and what it can lead to and you know how you can embrace it. And that's really when I thought, okay, it's got to be every single day. And Mike, you know, what you're saying about being more aware of it's like I almost wrapped both of those into, you know, my life to propel myself forward in a more positive way. Because I was always a happy person. I considered myself very happy. But I didn't feel a sense of peace that I feel now that I've been working on myself for the past couple of years, you know, that I've been making an effort into, you know, taking steps forward to increase my happiness.
It's that awareness that Mike was talking about. Just the fact that you're aware and you're actually feeling a little more in control because you're aware and you're doing stuff about it and you know you're on this positive trajectory, it makes you feel great, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does. And like Mike said, you have to take those first few steps. And like Kristen, you were saying, you know, it takes work. It's a process. And I think, Mike, you were talking in the book about sleeping and teaching yourself how to sleep. It's kind of like surfing. You know, you don't just get out on the board and ride those waves all of a sudden. You have to teach yourself. You have to ease yourself into the process. And then when you finally get it and you're riding that wave, it's just it's so rewarding.
Well, I think
it is. You know, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think you also have to prioritize happiness. It doesn't just come to you. You know, it's not like it's delivered to you.
Yeah, but I thought I was happy. Like I didn't think I had to prioritize it. But then when I was more aware of actually making it a priority, that's when I became, I think, truly happy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and it sounds like peace too. You know, with the way you describe happiness, it sounds like, you know, you had the kind of happiness that some of us need, which is, you know, that pleasure, that seeking. But, you know, later in life, as you began to, or later in your journey, when you began to work on yourself, a lot of the peace started to come. And I think that's pretty common in life, you know, from our teens to our 20s and then beyond, the way the brain sort of shifts. And, you know, the other thing that I think people will find, and I know this is true for me, is in the beginning, some of the behaviors will feel like you're pretending or acting as if or faking it till you make it. I love all of those phrases because that acting as if actually in some ways, I would say that this book that Amy and I wrote, we are in some ways tricking your brain into being happier, right? It's just sort of the brain feels a certain way. And there's actually this paradox that I often think about. And it's, you know, when is it more important to go to that yoga class or to wake up saying thank you? Is it when things are great, or is it more important and more effective when you're actually down on your luck? Because I would say it's the latter. So I think we're actually tricking the brain into thinking it's happier or acting as if you're happier even when you're not. And that eventually creates organic, true contentment, peace, happiness, which is one of the secrets of cognitive behavioral therapy, I would say.
Like when you smile enough, your insides eventually catch up with you.
And it's chemical. You know, it's the neurotransmitters of happiness as well.
You know,
I always use smiling, even if I'm going through a temporarily miserable experience. I know I've had times in my career where I've been very unhappy with a certain person at work, and I've still just walked in every morning with a big smile on my face, and I've just smiled at everybody. And, you know, it changes how everybody interacts with you. If you smile at people, they smile back at you. It kind of forces you into having a better day.
Yeah, I think it changes everything, doesn't it? And then it becomes that ripple effect you have a better day. And the other thing that I love is, I think we talk a lot about this in several chapters, is the fact that it's contagious. So, you are that pebble dropping into a pond, creating ripples that, affect that person.
Oh my gosh, totally. When I come home in a bad mood, it puts everyone else in a bad mood in my family. I've noticed that.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute, I'm the one who brought the entire house down.
Yeah.
That's right. So instead, walk in the door with a big smile on your face no matter what happened.
Yeah, and with 2 teenage girls, sometimes that doesn't work, but it definitely helps the mood. If I walk in and I'm, happy and I'm positive, or at least faking it until I can get there, that type of thing. You're right, it really does change things dramatically.
And yeah, it really does. And Amy, I'm just thinking about when in the book when we're talking about psychic thinking, because I think the other one of my favorite parts of the book is when we help people to identify the psychic thinking. So maybe you walk in and you have your twin daughters, or you have your significant other, not being very supportive and just sitting there on the couch, and you have that psychic thought of, oh, doesn't he know that today was a really important day for me, and I just got done with my radio show, and but did you verbalize it? So I think one of the ways that we can looking at think and act, I think you can act happy and you can have a smile on your face, but then you can also change your thoughts. So if you are expecting your significant other to be a psychic, which by the way, psychic thinking is one of the 7 pitfall thought patterns in the book, then you change that as well. So,
I don't give him a chance. When I cut my hair, I come home and I'm like, I cut my hair, honey. How does it look? I mean, you can't even give the guy, you can't give it a chance. It's just you have to create. I guess it's all a matter of creating your own environment, right, Kristen?
It is, and I'm going to engage in some psychic thinking really quick. I'm sure this book is going to be a wild success. It's out right now in stores.
It already is.
Yeah, it's out right now in stores right now. We can get it at Barnes & Noble. We can get it on Amazon. Where can we get this book, Amy?
Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Books A Million, your local independent bookstore, wherever books are sold. It's all over the U.S. and Canada.
That is awesome. Now, Amy, how do we keep up with you and everything that Chicken Soup for the Soul is up to? Because you've got so much going on over there.
I'm so happy she's taking time to
and
keynote at our conference too. It's such a blessing.
Oh, yeah.
We're just so thrilled.
I'm excited about that. So we are really entering the modern age, and so I know that people's eyeballs are more and more focused on their screens, and their ears are more and more listening to their earbuds. So we're going to people's eyes and ears where they are. So if you go to our website now, you'll see book trailers for all our new books. So it's chickensoup.com. And in fact, if you go to chickensoup.com, you'll see right at the top of the homepage, you'll see this new book, Think, Act, and Be Happy, with Mike's smiling face on the cover. If you click on that book, that's going to take you to 5 videos that Mike and I made a few weeks ago where we talk about the book overall, and then we do a deep dive into 4 of the chapters in the book. And so we will actually take you through the stories in those chapters and how you can use the stories to do CBT on yourself and solve some of the most common problems that are out there.
Wow. Well, I know after listening to this broadcast, besides going and rushing to the bookstore to get this book, people are also going to want to connect with you, Dr. Mike. So how can our listeners find out more about you and your life and what you're up to and where we can see you and all that?
You can go to my website, drmikedow.com. That's DRMikedow, where you can also download a free chapter of our book. And I'm at Dr. Mike Dow on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, always talking about ways to help people to reframe their brains and bring a little bit more happiness, joy, and peace to their life.
Well, it's such a pleasure to have you both. I can't wait to see you, Amy, in a few weeks. I can't wait to get a hold of this book and read it and use the tools, Dr. Mike. And thank you so much for coming on What Women Want today. We are so thrilled to learn about this great book and all that you both are doing together.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It was really fun, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks in Atlanta.
That is right. And next week, there's going to be someone else on we're going to see in Atlanta for sure. That is going to be another great show with Simple Fat Burn's Catherine Marshall, along with Catherine Morales, a marketing expert who used to head up Chick-fil-A's marketing. These are women who are making big waves and changing the world and letting us know how to do it. So remember, subscribe to us on YouTube. Do not miss one show. Go to whatwomenwantradio.com for more. And see you next week. Have a lovely night.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss and Kristen West, only on LA Talk Radio.